is just that eyebrow twitch that she can't help doing. Could you imagine if Hope was like, let's add that to the PowerPoint? Excuse
what
me?
year is it?
How old am I? This is how the podcast breaks up.
This is the last episode of Supergirl Radio. You want a Kryptonian? You got one.
Is it a movie about saving Argo? The answer to that one is no. It's called Witch for a Summer! ! Where does she want to go? Ask her. Talk to her. Really commune with flat Supergirl.
Did we set the bar too high or too low?
I think we set the bar real medium.
You're an intensely adequate podcast.
Good.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Noyce, and you're listening to Supergirl Radio.
McGurk! I love
Not
typing.
mess with my Google Docs, Meeksy.
Supergirl Radio is going live every night of the week. How do you like it? Is becoming a human burrito a plus or a minus? I don't know. It does seem snug.
I mean, they say you are what you eat.
Kira.
I love that.
So I do a podcast called Supergirl Radio, and one of our segments is Lena Luthor, Boardroom or Ballroom, because
Really? She looks like a boss in this coat.
Nasty Luthor like a different Luthor? It's not just Lena being mean?
No.
Helen Slater here. It's so fun to know that you're hosting a podcast called Supergirl Radio.
Welcome to Supergirl Radio, your source for all things related to the CW Supergirl TV series and the character of Kara Zor-El. My name is Rebecca Johnson.
I'm Morgan Glennon.
And for this episode of the podcast, we are live and wired on the DC TV Podcast YouTube channel and the Supergirl Radio Facebook page. And we are joined by Matthew Wilson, the property master of the CW Supergirl TV series. And Matthew said we could refer to him as Matt, so that is what we will go by. So welcome to Supergirl Radio, Matt.
Thank you both for having me. It's a pleasure.
Well, we are very excited because we actually, we've already talked about you on the podcast. I don't know if your ears were burning at some point, but you did make an appearance on DC Fandom a while back. It's been a while since that happened. But you are helping us cross something off of our bucket list. So just in case anyone didn't see that, this is what we talked about. Matthew Wilson from Supergirl, he had some props in the background of his shot, which I thought was very fitting that a property master would be like, I got to dress my shot. I got to make it look good. We definitely need to try to get him on Supergirl Radio.
Oh my gosh, that'd be so fun.
He's on my list. So you're making a dream come true for us. So we really appreciate that you're here.
All that stuff's missing now. It's down in LA.
So you didn't get
Where's
to
the monkey?
take everything.
Oh, people love that monkey. It was definitely a fun build. That stayed in our office for quite a while. There was a lot of talking points on that one. People love to look at it, go walk by it and talk about it.
Nice. We'll definitely talk about that in a little more detail. But I think to start off, you are what they call a property master. I think some people don't know that that's the official title. I don't know what do you go by when you introduce yourself to people? Do you refer to it as property master?
That's the official proper title, props master, property master. Yeah, that would be it.
And so what does a property master do for anybody who doesn't know?
Which is a very common question. People don't often think about our department when it comes to the industry and understand the ins and outs of it. But basically, we are responsible for, in general terms, whatever the actor will engage with in the story. There'll be story points of them, engaging with, a prop, so book or, utensils or food. We do all the food. We also are responsible for all the firearm safety, a very poignant subject matter these days in the press. So, that's we blanket that responsibility as well. And so whatever is story, scripted, action, then, if they're interacting with the set dressing, that's different. But if there's a specific item to their character, glasses, watches, rings, we get into all that as well, character props.
Wow, I didn't realize food came under
Yeah,
your
no, neither did I.
I've heard so many stories from actors who talk about how they try not to eat so much because they have to do so many takes. So it seems tough. But so do you provide like meals? Is that what you mean by dealing with food?
I've done 9-person dinner scenes. I've done Thanksgiving dinners where we've had 3 or 4 turkeys for carving on the side, and all the resets that involved. And all that food has to be handled, in the food safe parameters like you would at a restaurant. If they're going to handle the food, if they're going to interact with the food, sometimes it won't be scripted that they're going to eat, but the actor will engage with the food on their own volition. So you have to be prepared for that. And then you have to be able to reset that. Wide shot, you do the whole thing, then you go into coverage. So every bite is taken over and over again. Hence, the actors will eat too much. So there's the glorious spit bucket, which we provide that nobody knows about. And I've had young actors be overzealous and find themselves in trouble 14, 15 hot dogs later.
Yeah.
Oh God, they're like, no, I got to go method on this.
I just warn them. I say, this director does a lot of takes, and they're like, no, it's okay. I'm just gonna have some olives with my martini, and I buy one of those Costco size olive jars, and it's gone in an hour.
Oh my God.
You see the peaked faces on the set.
Well, that is really cool. That is something I did not realize about what a property master did. So thank you for that. And so some of it is building things, building props, and making things come to life. So how did you get into that? Is that something you've always tinkered with things, or is that something that you just got interested in when you got into television? How did that start for you?
Well, that's exactly right. I started tinkering with things. I was the kid driving my parents crazy, taking apart every alarm clock, seeing how it ticks. And little did I know at that age that was what was driving me to my passion and my direction, which was being creative, being artistic, understanding the engineering and the function and the physics of things at an early age, and finding an outlet for that. And growing up in the 70s and 80s, growing up at that time, academia and the schooling education, maybe in my part of the world, was very formal. So I didn't have a big outlet except for whatever I could do. So once I found a more creative outlet and found other schools to go to, and then found other avenues, and then once I was in my career, there was a time where I left the set where I was working on set as the dealing directly with the actors and facilitating the props to set. I stepped back and worked in a prop building shop, and I said, listen, I have all these artistic abilities and skills. I've trained myself through education and on my own time. And now I want to apply those understandings of mediums and plastics and glues and sculpting and, and all that stuff, and find a way to be creative and build props. And so I, apprenticed at a shop for a couple of years, and then I left and went back to set and carried on from there to hone my skills through the whole department.
That is so cool. And so you mentioned working with the actors, especially if they engage with some of the props that you were referring to. But what kind of other departments do you work with? I think you work with the art department. Is that correct?
We're a branch of the art department.
Okay, you're a branch of the art department. Okay.
So you'll have the production designer, art directors, right? And then around that, you'll have the set decoration department, the props department, right? You'll have even the paint department's involved with the art department. You've got drafts people designing the sets, construction building those sets. But the direct art department is we're branched off from that. So we answer to the designer, and we correlate with the director and the producers to get on tone with the show or the project, and to stay in line with the style and aesthetic, and then stay true to the character if it's a character driven prop, that's character specific.
Okay, so that's a good distinction to make for me, just to understand the art department and the various levels underneath it. So, do you also work with the stunt team if they have to handle certain props that you create for the characters?
Well, this show is a great example of that. So, you'll have every character have a stunt double, and they'll have their demands. They'll understand how they'll block out a scene and pitch it to the producers and be like, okay, here's what we can do, and here's what we can afford. Here's what the matrix of this fight is. And if they're fighting with these guns or this pickaxe or, this, if they're holding on to the precious item that they have to rescue or steal, that item itself, then even though it's not a weapon, becomes a stunt object. So then we have to then correlate with a stunt coordinator and say, hey, what kind of rough and tumble, behavior is going to occur here? Do I have to make this out of rubber, out of foam rubber? Does it have to be breakable so that it shatters or that it does break? And so we coordinate with their efforts. They give us a previs if we're lucky and have enough time to see their rehearsal videotape. And then we can see the actual action. And then they'll come to us sometimes and say, we want to add something. We want to add a sword. We want to add a metal pipe that bends, because they're basically, crafting the scene with their stunt performers. And then we do fittings with the stunt performers. Okay, well, this has to go on your wrist. If this has to go on your head, we have to make it fit, not just the actor, but it has to fit the stunt person as well, which is always a close physical match, but not an exact.
Yeah, that's that's really awesome because there's a lot of swords and hammers on Supergirl. So you definitely have to, and guns, you definitely have to fit those to the needs of the actors. Well, now that we've kind of gotten an understanding about kind of what you do, we have a lot of Supergirl questions.
Okay.
Imagine that as Supergirl
Shocking.
podcast. That has a lot of Supergirl questions. So we like to ask people when they first come on Supergirl Radio, how you met the character of Supergirl. Had you always known about Supergirl, or was this a character you just met when you started working on the show?
Well, I mean, I knew of and I saw growing up the original Supergirl series, and of course, Wonder Woman as well with Linda Carter. So the new series came about, and obviously I met her once I took on the project when it was offered. But that's my history. I'm old enough to know the originals.
Yeah, because you'd be surprised. We talked to a lot of people who say Melissa Benoist is my favorite Supergirl, or not just favorite, but first Supergirl.
Yeah, the one that
Yeah.
they know. Yeah.
Yeah. So there is the show introduced a lot of people to the character of Supergirl. So that's really, really cool.
The next generation, right?
Yeah. She is this generation Supergirl, which is really pretty cool. And so how did you come to become the property master of Supergirl? Was this something that you sought out?
This was literally a call from out of left field a little bit. I'd worked alongside Tyler Herron, the original production designer for the show. Also, he worked on Flash. And we had worked together when we were very young in this business, in our teens and in our early 20s. And then we parted ways. And this was our coming together many moons later as we worked our way up the ranks. And I was working across the street on the 100. And he offered me the show. And I was in between shows at that time. The 100 had wrapped. And I took the offer. He just called me out of the blue and pitched it to me. And I said, do you want to do a crazy big network television show called Supergirl? And I said, wow, all right. I said yes. And it was the first time I said yes to actually prop mastering. This was my first prop mastering gig.
Oh, that's so cool because I went through when we were going through the Instagram. I noticed some stuff from Fringe. So did you work on that show before? And in what capacity?
Yeah, so for me, that was a passion project for me. My wife and I were watching the first season of Fringe, which was shot in New York, and then we found out. Well, my wife Patty found out that it was coming to Vancouver, and we lost our minds. I'm like, I'll sweep the floor. I don't care. They need me to clean toilets. I'll get in there. But I knew that on my creative side, prop building wise, and for the tone of the show, I wanted to put my touch on it in some capacity. So I actually started as the truck supervisor, the truck person on that show, and then worked my way up from there to assistant prop master, where I was prepping my episodes with another on set named Gavin DeWest, and we alternated episodes. Rob Smith was the prop master. And so I got to be on set for most of it, and if not all of it, but as assistant prop master and working with the actors with Josh Jackson and Anna Torv. And Josh and I known each other from way back being teenagers, and because he's a local boy, Canadian boy. So it was nice to sort of reconnect with him and joke around.
That's so cool. I am also a big fan of that show. So when I saw, I was like, Fringe too?
Yeah, Fringe was huge for me and Patty. Very, very big passion project.
That is so awesome. Well, take us through your process going through Supergirl and doing your job, because I'm curious what your day to day was, what your steps were to get something. So let's pretend we just handed you the best episode script of Supergirl that's ever been written. And
after you're done crying and laughing, of course.
Yes, you felt so many emotions when you read it. We have just given you the best episode of Supergirl ever written. What do you do with it?
Well, I mean, if you want to talk about step-by-step process on breaking it down and getting it ready to go to camera, you first read the script, get out your highlighter, and start pulling out all the prop elements as they're scripted. Obviously, with the skills over the years, you learn to read between the lines. There's things that are not directly point by point saying, hey, Supergirl picks up said prop and scene continues. Sometimes it's nuanced within the writing, and you have to sort of fill the page with that. So you pull all that information out, you do your breakdown, you then go into a series of meetings, you pitch concepts. So you work with the designer and you start to craft concepts for the next laser gun or the next thing that's, the gadget. There's a lot of tech, and there was a lot of fabrication in that show. We were averaging anywhere from 12 to 20 builds per episode in 8 days, which is tremendous and more than I've ever done. So there was a lot of, there's a couple of days I worked 36 hours straight, sleeping in my office, trying to make deadlines. In the early days, it was very challenging, for a myriad of reasons. But regardless, we start with that process. You start to pull out the information, you confirm that, you have other meetings that will affect things, everything from, the stunt meeting to the background meeting, because that'll affect your numbers and who gets what and what does what. And then you disseminate all that information that it affects your decisions. It'll change your designs even, because you have to make, this is going to play day one. You really only have 8 days to make it, or it plays in the back of the schedule. You have another week. So maybe you keep the design as complicated, and especially for the fabrication stuff. The other stuff that you just gather, rent, pull out of inventory, that's fine. That still takes a lot of effort and work. On top of that, you have to start to design things that will stay in line with budget, as well creatively hit the tone of the show, be quality enough to make it onto the screen without embarrassing yourself, and function for the actors. And sometimes, you'll get some input from the actors on occasion, be like, I want it to be this way, and to help their scene, So you take all those influences and then you go through a series of meetings, get all approvals. You do a show and tell, where once you've got everything gathered, even if it's still in prototype form or concept form or halfway built or not painted yet, you still photograph it or bring it in and say, here's where we're at. Everybody looks at it, signs off on it, and you just forge ahead.
I'm just gonna take a guess that maybe one of the actors who had input on some things was maybe Jesse Rath. I can imagine he being somebody who would be like, no, I think it should look like this.
Jesse was great. He always was amazing with the props. The famous flashback to where he was in, a baseball uniform back in high school, all that bat flipping stuff he did practically.
Really?
He took a rubber bat and he went out into the trailer and at home, and he practiced. He loved his craft, and he loved the props, and he was very supportive. So I worked a little extra hard for him. And Kyler as well was tremendous.
Oh yeah, she had a lot of things to.
Oh yeah,
a lot of gadgets.
Yeah, we reinvented her twice, because we wanted to keep her relevant and up to date. And she was very much in tune and loves props, and her son loves props. And he got involved as well and pitched some stuff. He would send me drawings through Kyler and of guns that he wants his mom to have. And that was so sweet, as a parent as well. I'm like, oh, this is amazing. Little Easter egg, if you notice that on the mags of her laser pistol is right there is her son's initials and his age at the time.
Oh, that's so cool.
So that was a little homage that Collier wanted to share with her son, and so we did that, and the producers didn't mind, and that's just a little Easter egg for the fans to know.
That is so awesome. A little nice touch for him since he did a lot of work for you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
he
sure
was.
he's working hard.
I loved it, and Kyler was super cool and supportive, and she was very involved, and she wanted me involved, and I think the last time we reinvented her character and we streamlined her down with the hand of the soldier, and so that she could just morph any weapon to her hand, was just to make her slick, minimized, and without a chunky belt on her anymore, and keep her looking, just a total, Supergirl style, slick suit, and then give her some sort of superpower, even though she's human,
Right.
So we gave her that green Martian technology, and that gave her the ability to be just a kick butt and stand shoulder to shoulder with all those super aliens,
Yeah, it must be nice to be able to create any weapon that you want to out of
Yeah,
that.
seems handy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Well, and speaking about building things, what kinds of can we ask what kinds of equipment you use, and how do you make those things?
Yeah, we do a lot of different stuff. We had a shop in house that did a lot of our work, and then we did outsource a lot because they had machines better than I did. But 3D printers,
I think I have a video of
Get in
maybe
there.
the
Oh, 3D yeah?
printing.
Yeah.
I think we can talk over it. Yeah.
Yeah, so we had one of those at that exact machine, and unfortunately, my engineer guy didn't work out, so the other artists that were there didn't have the capacity to run the machine as far as knowledge. I was going to learn it, but then how was I going to, run a 3D printer while running a department? But I was into it, but I just didn't have not enough hours in the day. So we outsourced some of that stuff eventually within a tremendous shop, Unlimited Design. My buddy Paco runs it, and he did most of our 3D design, if not all our 3D design stuff. And that's why you see those amazing shapes and all that technology that looked really kind of cool, that we could achieve all those compound curves and complexity within a short timeline of creating something, and within the budget. But then there's stuff like the calligraphy you see in the books. That's all hand done by a builder in-house. Yeah, all that illustration, including the handwriting. Some of the handwriting was computer generated, so it looks handwritten, and then we would print it onto the paper, but the illustrations are all original and then copied in with the text font. All those illustrations are done by Ben Dubois, one of my in-house builders. He's a tremendous illustrator. So he took everything, did all those portraits, of all those, God killers,
Yeah,
So
I would have a lot of questions for you said his name was Ben?
Yes.
Because I love to translate Kryptonese. I try to do that anytime it shows up in a comic book, and so I enjoy doing that. But that's a lot of Kryptonese in those journal pages. That would be overwhelming to me. So kudos to him to put all of that in there.
Well, that all that stuff in those books was done by the art department themselves. So it'd be Ryan and Sally. We had all these great graphic designers. They're all part of the art department as well. So they had the cipher, they had the actual font in the computer, so it was a lot faster. They could type it, and it looks handwritten. So it looks scribed, but it's actually computer generated. And
Wow.
and there's other stuff, like you'll see all of Lena Luthor's spell book. That's all hand done by Ben. That's all Ben.
Really?
That's all Ben's calligraphy. That's
Wow.
all. He has an penmanship like you wouldn't believe.
I was about
It's
to say
beautiful.
that's calligraphy. Wow, that's amazing.
That's hand done, including the illustrations.
Whoa, that
Yeah,
is really neat.
That book is priceless. That was a work of art by him.
Very cool. Well, I guess since we're talking about the props, let's just keep going through our bucket list of things to ask you about, because
right.
we have a lot of questions about a lot of props. So I guess the first thing we should talk about is the flying monkey, since we previously mentioned that. So what was building the mechanical flying, the toy man flying monkey? How did that go?
So that started off with, okay, there are going to be a bunch of CGI monkeys. It's it's the Yellow Brick Road theme, right? It's the Toy Man backstory, which is amazing. And of course, he comes and attacks the DEO, has all these monkeys, and then Supergirl comes and saves the day. But the director, Glenn Winter, was like, okay, we need a bunch of monkey debris on the floor because we can't pay to CG all this stuff in every shot. Once we've won the day and we see all the detritus on the floor. So And then we need one hero monkey that obviously they're going to dissect in the lab later. So we got the image of what the CGI file was, and we had to then sculpt to match the digital model. So the art department gave us 2-scale printouts of how big it should be. And then quite literally, we laser cut all the wings and glued all those pieces together. We did some 3D printed parts for the back to mount the wings together to the backing. But the whole chest cavity, torso, and the whole head is like the shoulder caps and stuff were all, some were found parts, but the rest was all hand sculpted and then molded and cast so that we could repeat the shape over and over again, and then all hand painted.
Wow.
This one specifically, I built the internal mechanical guts for the arms and the whole torso and all the wiring. And at one point, it did battery operate where the arm would move mechanically with servos. That was supposed to be on cue when they were dissecting it in the lab. And as it goes, when you put a prop in front of an actor, they poked something and snipped a wire, and then that fun little extra bit didn't make it on camera.
Well, at least you were able to make it work. And I guess that does bring up a point that sometimes you also have to work with the special effects people. That was not something that I guess I knew in my head, but I didn't think to make that connection. So the flying monkey actually started with the special effects and CGI, and then you just adapted their design.
Yeah, it's with visual effects, correct? Yeah,
visual effects. Okay.
Yeah, so they would all be the digital world. So they create the model. They had that all orchestrated, and like, okay, well, in this situation, instead of the prop master or the art department creating a 2D image, and then we'll create the 3D model to match what the prop build will be, it was vice versa. They already had the model. We had to build based off of their concept, and as a project like that, it's super fun. I mean, flying monkeys.
Yeah.
That sequence when Supergirl and the DEO are fighting the flying monkeys is one of my all-time favorite sequences in the show. It has maybe my favorite Supergirl moment where she heat visions one of the flying monkeys, and it's the coolest thing. So kudos to the flying monkeys. I guess we can move on to another sort of movie themed prop. You contributed to the Ghostbusters proton pack. So will you tell us about this prop and how you all created it?
And this is one of my favorites because we would in our private meetings in the production, that's how we referred to it. It's like, okay, we're reinventing the Ghostbuster backpack for this sequence. And of course, this prop has been recycled several times for different episodes. You saw it with Kyler originally, where it was all black. It didn't have all this cladding on it. It didn't have the glowing donut in the back originally. But this was version 3.0, I think. And so whenever somebody says, hey, you get to build your own proton pack and you get that challenge, we'll go like, how can I make that cooler? From the original Ghostbusters and how clunky it was to like, okay, I'm going to make, a futuristic looking one, something high tech technology that that our Kalun friend had involved with his technology. Then you're sort of thinking, okay, maybe there's a little touch of Legion in here, future tech, and it's always hard to do future tech on a budget, but I had a lot of fun with that one, and that was based off a real backpack, and then we clad it. We took the shape that we had already designed for those traps for when Magan was going to go trap sorry, my head's in a fog there. When we were fighting all the evil guys from the Phantom Zone.
The Prime
Right,
Phantom
yes.
and the
Yeah.
Phantom.
The phantoms, yeah.
We didn't see a lot of it, but there were little round discs that she put on the
Yeah.
on the ground where she was supposed to trap, and then she took out. So we took that and we added it to the pack, so it sort of made sense that if those were traps for them, it goes into the backpack, kind of like the Ghostbuster thing, when they shoot it under the ghost.
Yeah.
So
Yes, of course.
It was our version of that, and then a lot of hard work went into that. A bunch of 3D printing, obviously, for that section. The rest is just laser cut plates, and then the whole gun is a 3D print, and then we did a mold and we cast rubber versions of it, and so that we could fall around and fall down and do all that fun stuff.
Very
Well,
cool.
it looks great. You mentioned some Legion tech, some future tech. So it looks like we have some scanner devices.
There you
Will
go.
you tell us about those?
Yeah, that was brainy when we did the flashback episode or the looping episode with that that blue man, trying to from the menagerie, trying to trap our superheroes. So that was a Legion,
Naxum Torque. Yeah.
a little hilarious guy. So we had to do some Legion tech, but of course, in negotiating with the producers and how many times we were going to see it in the shot, I wanted to give it like a HUD display, so a CGI, a VisFX screen. So every time you press the button, it would be a visual effect. But that's $8,000 every time you see the thing turn on. So you can imagine on how many setups and shots that would be non-feasible. So there you go. You got an edge lit acrylic screen with some etching in it. It's got Kryptonian writing in there, or Kaluan writing. I can't remember. I can't see it right there. And then I gave it sort of crosshair theme, so that if he put it, when he catches the ship in this space, and the button actually had 2 different color LEDs in it, so that he could switch it from blue to red to sort of help tell the story when he did trap something or mark something, and give the audience a sense of understanding that, the device was working. But always with the Legion tech, it has to be these beautiful curved shapes to match with all the geometry in the ship. And of course the theme of the white.
Speaking of the Legion cruiser, you also sent us this image. Did you do something with the chair, or what did you want to talk about with the Legion cruiser?
This is one of my favorite builds because it was the blood transfusion for these characters. So the console was built by the construction department under guidance of the designer, and then I built this cool add-on plate to it where you can see the blood, the fake blood, all inside this rectangular section, and then we LED lit the pucks that look like they're cycling the blood out of one character and into another.
So cool.
Yeah, I guess you can't just do a blood fusion there on the set. I guess you do have to fake that. That would make sense.
Well, also they're superheroes, so it's like you have to have special technology to pierce their skin. And
right. Right. Yeah, they're not just like anybody else's skin. They do need special things. And you also sent us this image, and I couldn't remember what this was. What is this, Matt?
I didn't give you more than one. I'm sorry. That's the back of the Phantom Zone projector.
So okay.
We were like, this stumps us.
Well, I was like, I don't know what this is.
Could you imagine if we knew what super fans we'd be?
well, it makes sense. We don't normally see the back of the Phantom Zone projector. Normally we see the front, which is what we're looking at here on the video. So I guess, Matt, if you can walk us through the Phantom Zone projector, how does one create that?
This was a great project because when you look at the original comic books, and you want to always you want to honor DC and their legacy and their mythology and their anthology. So if you look at the original comic books, you'll see that the Phantom Zone projector has a very basic shape because it's a comic book, so there's not a lot of detail in the illustration at that time. So I wanted to go back to that and say, not everything has to be so complex, not everything has to look so slick and high tech. That this Phantom Zone projector, I wanted to do a callback to the original comic book shape, and so that's why it has that very deliberate large ring shape, and the tech in the back is more industrial and a little high tech steampunk, or if you want to call it. To give it that feel and honor the original DC illustration.
Well, you did a great job because we could recognize it right away that it was the Phantom Zone projector because it does look like that in the comics. So we certainly appreciate that for all the research that you do with that. We do have some questions about the sciencey things I guess everything that was related to Supergirl had science in it in some way with alien technology and futuristic things. But we are specifically wanting to know about the L Corp tech and some of the things that Lena Luthor was doing.
So there's a 36-hour project. Yeah, I didn't sleep for 36 hours trying to make that deadline. I literally walked those 3 cylinders onto set, and we were installing them as they were lighting the set to shoot.
Oh gosh.
They'd seen the concepts and the development, but not the finished product until it literally landed in front of camera a half hour before we shot it. So these were, this is great. I mean, Lena's lab was a fun house of high tech, right? So these are all done amazing work by a machinist, Dennis Briest, and his new shop. And this is all machined aluminum, all turned on the lathe and then polished. We put pneumatic actuators on the top cylinders. We ran the air lines through the boxes on the side that run iPhones for screens to show you the heart rate and blood pressure of the hearts. The prosthetics department did an incredible job on the hearts. We then ran some hoses to the hearts to literally suspend it, but also to hide the airlines, which were puppeteered. As you can see, the hole in the one stand in the back. The floor was elevated off the stage, so you can run the airlines down below the floor, and the puppeteer could then pump the heart to make it actually pulse.
Whoa.
And then all the lighting was rigged with a set wireman. So he gave us the LEDs, and we put them in the rings top and bottom. And then they ran the power down through the base, and they can control the lighting on the dimmer board that controls all the lighting on the set. And so they can change the lights on that. And then we put a retractable needle. You can just see it poking out at the top. That was on the pneumatic piston. And so at any point, the special effects department was rigged with a pressure tank, and they could drop the needle and inject the heart with whatever Lena was injecting it with. And that heart turned cancerous, and she was doing all those tests. And that was what I would call probably a feature level prop on a TV show.
Yeah, no, that sounds very involved. That's so cool.
There was puppetry on Supergirl. That's exciting.
There was, I know. We actually have Nicole Green, who's our science consultant here on Supergirl Radio, and she wants to know. She said, "I'm curious about the microscopes Lena uses in her science setups because some of these can be big dollars. Are these loaned from institutions, or is there any of the science equipment purchased, or is it primarily loaned?"
The really large one she used a lot that looked really custom. I had made that was all custom made. We used some parts from a microscope, for the eyepieces and stuff. But everything else, those arms with the needles that came around, the acrylic base at the back, that whole structure is all custom fabricated, and then with laser cut plates to make it look sexy with some glowy buttons, and the keypads all light up. But that was all custom made. The other one that you may have seen, which ended up in the DEO, was an electron microscope. We actually bought the top half of a real electron microscope as a part for probably a few $1,000s, and it weighed over 100 pounds.
Oh my gosh.
And we just modified it onto an existing microscope to make, because an electron microscope costs tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so we couldn't get one with the whole base and everything. So we just sort of fudged it together with real parts, and made sort of a more streamlined version of it.
That's so cool.
That is good to know. We had questions about that before, whether you used real microscopes, and if you did, what did you do with them after the episode was shot?
I think some of our scientist listeners were a little jealous of some of the equipment it looked like you guys had. So.
We had the usual. We had the standard microscopes there, whenever we wanted to just look at a slide. But yeah, there was a few special ones.
Nicole in the chat said, "I've been wondering what model that this was for years. My soul can finally rest knowing it is an original concept." Answering some long simmering questions.
I'm just glad it passed as a real thing.
Yeah, it does look really good. And speaking of some technology that Lena Luthor had, this is something that we want to know about. We're not sure if this was all CGI or if you actually built it. But Hope the AI,
one that's near and dear to our hearts.
We are big fans of Hope and her murderous tendencies, wanting to kill Supergirl. So was this an actual prop, or was this all visual effects?
Well, what part do you think was a prop, and what part do you think was vis effect?
I'm guessing that the base is the prop.
You'd be correct. So that was basically our version of L Corp's Alexa. And so that's basically a stylized puck shape with some cool, counter diagonal LED lights with some diffused acrylic stripping, and then the beautiful work of our VisFX department doing that amazing hourglass. Yeah,
we're big fans of Hope. And speaking of some Luthor equipment or technology, we also wanted to know about the Lexo suit. Did you all build I'm assuming, but you'll have to answer the question. Is the full suit something you did, or did you just build some pieces that they could wear?
So the only real parts of the suit that existed are what you're seeing. The whole rest of it is VisFX.
Oh wow.
That makes sense.
So once again, the arm is based off their digital model. And then of course we took some liberties. There wasn't, you can see where the design is really refined and where the glove is maybe a little clunkier than I wanted it to be. Once again, time and money being the biggest, hurdle. And then, so that whole forearm piece is 3D printed and painted. And then we put on some accents. And then on the underside, we actually, after the 3D print, we retrofitted a ratchet strap system for motocross forearm bracing, wrist bracing, to create a wire tension system inside so that you could sleeve your arm in, and then you just ratchet turn the disc on the bottom, and you can fit it to more than one arm. So hence Lex's arm or the stunt person.
The Lexo suit is so cool. So thank you for explaining that. I guess we'll keep going with the Luther related items.
Well, actually, I'll add to the suit.
Yeah.
They asked me twice to build it, and I gave them the time and the money quote. And that turned them away both times.
And they were like, never mind.
It would be equivalent to the Atom suit. If you can appreciate the Atom suit, that took, I don't know, 5-8 months to build and hundreds of thousands of dollars. So, it's a matter of playing off, is the character going to stay long enough? And, is a CG cheaper than the practical? And then the maintenance on the practical, CG suits don't break.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, you can retool those any way you want to. Well, that is very cool. Well, we were curious about the Luther courtroom sketches. Could you explain the process behind these? Who drew them, and how you all go about creating these?
So once again, another illustration. I can't recall who illustrated these. I don't remember if it was Ben or not. I apologize for that. But this comes with a lot of direction, right? They want to know exactly what angles they want the photos to be portrayed as. So they'll have the actors in the scenes, and then, or they'll pose the actors with a stills photographer and be like, this is exactly, and this is all from the director's direction through the production designer and art directors. We want these exact frames of illustrations of the sketch artists in the courtroom. So they're very premeditated, and they're very styled and designed so that you get the exact tone right, so that when they see the images, we're invoking the right reaction.
I like the little touch of the handcuffs on little.
Yeah.
So those are very cool. And there's also another Lena Luthor portrait that we've always had questions about, because in the story, James Olsen has taken a picture of Lena Luthor sleeping, and we always thought that was maybe borderline a little bit creepy. So
I
we
just
wanna,
like how immaculate she looks while she's sleeping. This
she
is
really
exactly
does.
how I look as I'm sleeping as well.
I can't remember exactly the storyline to this photo. I believe it was a gift, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And we unwrapped it in that beautiful gray fabric. And I think it's because he's a shutterbug and a world-renowned photog that he just wanted to capture her beauty and honor her. And so that's I think that's where it comes from. So that was, once again, a very, very well orchestrated photo shoot with a stills photographer, and this is what they ended up with. And for me, I wasn't involved at all except for framing it and wrapping it up.
Gotcha.
Ah.
It really is a beautiful photo.
a great photo.
We just like to imagine what it was like for James to get right up and close to her while she slept.
The Flash is so quiet.
Yeah, he did not wake her up. She must be a heavy sleeper.
Those guys with those cameras.
Well, thank you for answering that question, because that is something that we talk about a lot. Okay, so what else do we need to hopefully we can get through some of these Kryptonian things pretty quickly. The staff of Kolar, that's a pretty big prop. So what was involved in that?
That was a tremendous build. The shape was so organic, and then we had to find a way to hide power and lights inside it to illuminate all the crystals above. So, once again, that's sort of a rig where and of course it has to be, green Martian technology. So it has to have a certain aesthetic and tone. So that was actually all aluminum bent into shapes, and then aluminum pipe bent, and then we shrouded it in a really hard Bondo and sculpted that Bondo into that shape. And then we made a cut and a divide in the middle of the staff with a set screw so that you could sleeve apart the shaft of it and access the batteries. And what we did is once before we built the crystals, the whole head of the crystals were a mix of real crystals, black sand, and 3D printed crystals. So we get enough repetition of shape. We glued all that onto a sphere that was clear, and we trapped a flashlight at the base that we then we jury rigged a wire tether down to the base through the shaft that we could access the batteries separately without taking apart the top. And once we anchored the crystals in the top, we then closed that sort of claw cage of tangs around it that were just aluminum, so they were bendable without snapping or breaking any of them.
Wow.
Wow.
The staff of Kolar really is cool. And I think I said Kryptonian before because I was looking ahead to some things, but this is actually Green Martian technology. So I just wanted to clear that up. But yeah, so the staff of Kolar made a lot of, had a lot of screen time in season 3. So I'm glad we got to hit that. But to get to the Kryptonian things now, the Sword of Juru. Could you tell us about this?
That was in a collaboration once again with the comic book release. So working in conjunction with DC, and they had that character with that specific shaped sword in their mythology. So we, the designer Tyler wanted to honor that. So he said, make the sword like the comic book. So it's got that crazy hook in it, and we literally machined that out of aluminum. And then did the same thing again with bamboo. So we took literally, in order to make stunt versions, we took bamboo flooring and planed it and machined it and lathed it on a three-axis lathe, all the design back into it. And then the hilts and the grips and the pommels are all 3D prints, then molded and cast into rubber so that we could then trap the bamboo blades into the rubber hilts and they'd be stunt safe.
Wow.
And then, of course, there's the one aluminum master, which is what you're looking at there. And then, once again, a 3D printed piece with the Kryptonian messagery on there. And then I had a custom leathersmith friend of mine do the scabbard.
Do you recall what the Kryptonese says? I guess I'm lazy. I don't want to have to translate it, but I was just wondering if you remembered off the top of your head.
It does say, I don't remember it off the top of my head. It does say something poignant to the World Killer.
Okay. All right.
Ah.
I'll have to go through there and translate it and see if I can figure that out. And so we do have some more Kryptonian things. So when Kara goes back to Argo in season 3, she is given a box from her mother, and it has, I believe, a Daressa plant inside of it. Could you guide us through the creation of the box?
This is something that sort of kind of fell into my purview of design and finish. I didn't want to just give her a flower, like hand her a single flower as she left Argo. So we found this beautiful little box, and then we clad it with the right color tone, laser cut pieces of gold. We put it, in this beautiful little jar with like these little clear blue Orbeez beads, like water cells for the flower inside that little vial. We found that beautiful kind of alien organic blue fabric to back it with to complement the petal colors. And then the symbols is something that I helped generate with the art department to sort of be iconic for the citizens of Argo. So if you notice, people in the background wore them like crests on their shirts. And it has a saying that reflects the motto of Argo on it, something about the light. I don't remember the exact quote, but we then translated that into Kryptonian and put that there, and then put the symbol of Rao on those crests, and put them on their costumes, and put them on the box here. So it felt very ceremonial, very much a heartfelt gift, as opposed to just a flower in hand.
Oh, so that's what that is on the glyph. I didn't know that was the symbol of Rao. Okay, very
That's
cool.
So cool.
Well, that just gives me more Kryptonese to go through and translate. Did you
It's
also
a beautiful
have
box?
It is a beautiful box. Did you have to also build, because there is a Daressa tree, like a Daressa plant in Laura's house? Is that something you also had to create?
So that was a combination between Greens and Set Deck, and then yes, they had to build that tree.
Wow.
flower by flower.
It was pretty big. So
Yeah.
supposed to grow as she did, and it grew pretty tall. And you also created some Kryptonian books with more Kryptonese. But could you tell us a little bit about these different books?
Yeah, this is a great book. It got replayed quite a bit. I'm very happy for that because we spent a lot of money on that book. The covers are 3D printed. The spine is something that you can buy at the craft store, but it's not very less conventional modular spine you can build books with. And it just felt great in tone with the color theme and of a Kryptonian technology. And then inside are all acetate pages that are clear foil with chrome writing. That's all heat set chrome onto acetate. And I had to ship that out to another province to get that made. And
Whoa.
that is all real. Ryan, once again, helped with, because this was originally the Kryptonian dictionary that Mxyzptlk used in the Fortress to challenge Supergirl. And then we recycled it a few times into, a mythology prop that would sit there on a cradle in the Fortress of Solitude. But that was the Kryptonian dictionary when she was challenging him in the final act. And it only showed up on screen for, a mixy second. But the writing is all definitions of DC characters. It's actual real alphabetical descriptions of DC characters. You have to put something in there, and you can't just put gibberish so you'll get called out. People will freeze frame and
Yeah.
say, you're not saying anything. So Ryan retyped out all these DC character descriptions on every page.
Yeah, I remember being jealous that he had a book of like Kryptonese that I wish I could have had for myself. So that is really, really cool. Were you going to say something, Morgan?
No.
Oh, okay. I didn't want to interrupt. I guess since we're a little bit pressed for time, since we've talked about some of the Kryptonian stuff, and since you mentioned the Fortress, I was curious about the differences between the cosmic hammer and the solar hammer, because there are two different hammers, and I was wondering if you could kind of guide us through the differences there.
Oof, I couldn't tell you the differences. I only got involved with the solar hammer.
Oh, okay.
Ah.
This is our crazy invention for that crossover when we were then we introduced Superman and Lois, and so unfortunately my fabricator for 3D printing was not available for this project, so I had it machined all out of solid aluminum. So the original hammer is beautiful, real, and there I am, middle of the night rigging the lighting. I think I'm about 24 hours into my day here. And I'm really proud of that one. That one came out really well. And I knew I was going to get heat online for all the Thor fans. But, some of the other fans that were so in love with it that wanted to cosplay it and build it for Halloween, I sent my specs out, as you can see on my Instagram, to help those folks out because, I know that they want to build this stuff too and run around and have fun. So they could build it to scale.
That's so cool.
Whoa.
But we had to make rubber ones, and that was a challenge as well. And so it glows in post with CGI help. But unfortunately, the actress is so petite, she could not hoist the real one. The real one got very little screenplay, and the rubber ones did all the work.
That's so funny.
Well, that's awesome that you're helping cosplayers out, because I know sometimes I have cosplayer friends who build things out of foam armor and things like that, and so it helps them if they actually have specs. Yeah, that is really, really helpful. I guess let's see what else. Morgan, I know you wanted to.
I want to skip to one that's near and dear to my heart since we're getting a little short on time, which is the Ramacon Rama cards.
Yes, let's get to that.
I saw this in the episode and I was like, well, that's incredible.
Yeah, we made custom cards for their poker table. They were, gods around the table playing a godlike game of poker, and all the gold coins all have his face on them.
Oh my gosh!
We had them custom 3D printed with his portrait on them, and so they're playing with gold coins with his face as well.
That's hilarious. Now, did Mitch Pileggi just take a couple of those on his way out? Because if I had coins with my face on them, I wouldn't be able to resist.
I was looking the other way if he did, and we made thousands of them. So I'm
my gosh.
I'm sure.
Did you have like were the cards like a full set? Did it have like all the characters on them, or was it just him?
Was it just Ramakan?
Was it just
No,
Ramakan?
we did the full set, and then we put him in that specific one. Yeah. So
that's so funny.
That was a fun one to do. That was a funny little gag. And then and all those coins weren't painted gold; they were all gold leafed by hand.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that if we could have from the set, we would take the Rama cards.
I would have stolen the cards.
And speaking of that, Mark in the chat asks, did you personally keep anything from Supergirl? Did you take anything with you?
After all those years of all that hard work, I had my team maybe cast me an extra thing or two out of the shop just so I could have it on my shelf. To remind me of all the hard work. So I might have a duplicate of the Allstone sitting in my curio cabinet. We were molding and casting them anyway, and some of them don't pass the cut for making the camera. They get a bubble trapped in them, or there's a flaw, a bad seam. So good enough for me for a keepsake, but not good enough for camera.
Yeah, I mean they're not going to want to keep those, so they want to keep the ones that worked and were on screen. So that is really cool. Well, I guess if you have time, we're going to hit some real quick questions to try to see if we can get everything in. So if we want to treat this as kind of a lightning round, Donna says Melissa said in an interview she ended up taking home all the little dinosaurs that popped up on the Catco set. Were you part of setting them out, and how did it start? Do you know how many she ended up with?
Oh, as she's a huge fan of dinosaurs, there was all kinds of silly stuff that happened. Kevin Smith directing went out and bought a whole bunch of Nerf guns, and we had Nerf gun fights on set with the cast to keep them distracted and entertained for in between setups. And then the dinosaurs came out for some reason. I think we had them somewhere sort of dressed on somebody's workstation. I think in the DEO, they were sitting on computer consoles and stuff. And so, she would come by and yank one, and so they we knew what was up. So I think between set deck and props, we had some fun with that, and she was welcome to take as many as she liked. I mean, the strangest thing about this show, she's the number one on the show, deals with so little props, right?
That's true.
Well, I had very little interaction with her. I had very little need to interact with her because anything she was dealing with prop wise was when she was Kara in Catco, but it was notebooks and reporting, but not as involved as everybody else. Very strange to be on a show where the number one is so propless.
Well, speaking of that, Claudia asks, not sure if this is under Matt's purview, but who paints the in-process painting in Kara's loft? We saw many scenes where it looked like there were easels in Kara's apartment. So did you have anything to do with those?
When we did engage with it, I would be involved with the canvas and the brushes and stuff like that. But art department would get involved with the paintings and set deck as far as, because it's mostly dressing. So that stuff in process. She didn't engage with it very much, and when she did, it was more just play the camera to her angle. Let's not see what she's doing, because obviously, we don't want to get into trying to create a masterpiece on the canvas over time, and so the very little involvement from me, unfortunately, with that. We didn't. That story didn't really build.
Yeah, the Danvers sisters really like to paint. We found out
that way
late in season 6. Alex is a fantastic painter. So good to know about the Danvers sisters and their painting. This will be the last question. Then we're going to play some real quick snap judgments. Mark also asks about the totems, since you mentioned that in season 6. Were they designed to fit together and actually form the Allstone, I guess is what he's saying, for the keep away fight in episode 19, or was there a spear, a separate thing from the individual totems? How did they all actually fit together to make the Allstone?
Yeah, so you can see on my Instagram, you can see the engineering side of it. So when we did the new Mixie episode in that final season, and he sang the song about it, that's when I flagged it with the producers, and I'm like, okay, so what is this final story arc over the last 7 or 8 episodes about this Allstone? And then they're like, oh yeah, we should talk about that. And so we had a quick meeting just with the producers and myself about, what does this want to be? How does it want to function? And they had a very specific idea that there's these totems, these specific innocuous objects throughout the world that would morph into a crystal with a certain trait. And so once we discerned what those 7 objects were, I believe it was, I had to reverse engineer it. So we had to go back on how many of the crystals there were, how many episodes we had left. I had to realize that it had to come up with a final shape that, even though it would morph into a single crystal, we had to have all these shards. So we literally reverse engineered a 3-dimensional geometric shape that we could piece out. So there were these 5 spires that split off the top, and if you bring them together, they create the top half. The bottom was like a flower shaped base, and then the core in the middle was trapped by all the spires, and that was all the elements of the shard, so that geometrically and mathematically it comes together as one piece in real life physically.
So was the
So
love
cool.
totem the base? Is that the flower base?
That's its original totem shape, and then it morphs into the purple base, which was more geometric in shape.
Oh, that's so
Interesting.
cool.
Yeah,
so if you go to the IG, my IG, you can see the computer renderings of how it splits apart.
yeah. Sometimes on screen, we don't get that close up of how everything works. So it's nice to hear the description of all of that, because it's really interesting.
I hate to say it, but a lot of the times my biggest fan is the editing room floor. The story isn't told always by the prop. I'm afraid it's
Yeah.
not always the Lord of the Rings. It's about the story of the characters.
Sure.
So they only have so many times to do an insert.
Well,
Yeah.
it's cool. It's cool to know that there's so much thought that goes behind all of these things, and that you put meaning into them. We really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Well, Morgan, shall we make
Yeah, I
some
think
snap
we'll do
judgments?
some quick snap judgments.
In the game of snap judgments, each person is presented with 2 options, but must only choose one. First instincts are recommended, and explanations are unnecessary.
Okay, so our first snap judgment is: which would you rather use if you were in trouble? The cosmic hammer or the solar hammer?
Solar hammer.
I mean, I think I've got to go solar hammer too. That thing lights up.
Yeah, that's true. The solar hammer does have a little bit of a cooler look to it. The cosmic hammer is a little similar. I believe this is the cosmic hammer that we have. But I think since Matt is here with us, I think I'm going to go solar hammer as well.
Okay, which Kryptonian book would you rather read? Thomas Coville's Kryptonian Journal or Selena's Ancient Kryptonian Book?
Selena's book.
Yeah, that book is pretty cool looking.
I think Selena's book, it has a cooler shape, and she probably has some like weird ancient spells or something. It might be a little more dangerous to read. Selena's. Actually, though, Thomas Coville had a lot of good Kryptonian notes. He was very into it.
He did. He's got a lot of probably like a lot of rants in there.
Yeah.
A lot of railing against the system and stuff like that. that
You
could
also
be
have
fun.
the recipe for the Haranel so that you can make world killers. So
Yes, that
True.
too. So
Yeah.
also dangerous.
I guess
Really
either way you go,
danger anywhere you
you're gonna cause trouble. I might say Thomas Coville's journal.
I think I'm gonna go Tico's journal too on that
there you go.
one. It's dangerous and it's a little bit entertaining. All right, our last snap judgment. Which piece of art would you be more likely to hang up on a wall in your house? The courtroom sketch of Lena Luthor or James Olsen's photograph of Lena Luthor while she's sleeping?
Oh wow. I would say the portrait.
Oh, the courtroom, the sketches or the
No,
actual photograph?
No, the Sleeping Beauty.
Yes. Yeah, it's a little creepy, but I might say the portrait of Lena sleeping as well.
It's a really well done shot, but I like the courtroom sketches. There's just like they're telling me a story. There's handcuffs. There's drama.
Yeah. So either way, Lena Luthor just really, she is her own piece of art, I feel like. So thank you, Matt, for playing Snap Judgments with us, and we'll play a video to get out, and then we'll say goodbye to you. No judgments on your Snap Judgments. Snap judgments have no right or wrong answer. So thank you for playing with us. Well, that is going to do it for our interview with Matthew Wilson. Thank you so much for joining us on Supergirl Radio and talking us through some of your builds and what you do. I actually learned a lot. So I have much more of an appreciation of what you do and the teams that you work with. That I think are so important to any production, but especially Supergirl, that sometimes don't get the attention that I think they should get. So I really appreciate you coming on and spending time with us. How can our listeners and viewers keep up with you on the internet if they have any more questions?
I'm at Madzar on Instagram. There you go. You can check out. I've posted a lot of the builds on there from the show. Obviously, we're done now, but you know, if you want some insight on some of your favorite stuff, you'll probably find it there. And if I catch your comments, I tend to respond on my free time if you have a question.
Yeah, your Instagram is one of my personal favorites because it has so many great pictures and information about the show. Well, I guess we are going to kick you out of here. But thank you for spending time with us.
Thanks again. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been really fun to talk about this with you.
It's been my pleasure. Thanks for your time.
All right, we are going to kick Matt out, and I'm going to change my background here so that we can adjust that. And I guess, Morgan, we should get to some DC TV podcasts and Supergirl radio plugs. Who do we have?
I guess we should.
We should. I found the clip, so let's get to that. If you would like to contact Supergirl Radio, you can post a comment on our website at supergirlradio.com. You can email us at supergirlradio@gmail.com. If you'd like to leave us a voicemail, you can call us at 678-718-7252. You can like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter and Instagram, all at Supergirl Radio. You can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Radio Public, Podchaser, and Spotify, where we also have a Spotify playlist that includes music featured on and inspired by the CW's Supergirl TV series. We are listed on DC's fan page, which you can find at dccomics.com/DC-fans. If you like what we do, we encourage you to give us a rating and write us a review on Apple Podcasts. If you enjoy our Supergirl Radio live streams, make sure to subscribe to the DC TV Podcast YouTube channel and hit that notification bell to get notified when we go live and wired. DC TV Podcast also has a TeePublic store, so if you're in need of new DC TV related t-shirts, tank tops, sweatshirts, onesies, mugs, notebooks, pillows, or stickers, go to supergirlradio.com and click on the TeePublic store link at the top of the page.
Supergirl Radio, Superman and Lois Radio, The Flash Podcast, and Legends of Tomorrow Podcast, Blacklight and Podcast, Batwoman Podcast 2, and Titans and Doom Patrol Podcast just for you. Justice League Dark Podcast, Green Lantern Podcast, Stargirl Podcast, Strange Adventures Podcast, and finally my favorite of the bunch, DC TV After Dark, where you're allowed to say fuck.
And speaking of DC TV Podcast TeePublic Store, as we just were, we have some prop-related merch.
Yeah, we have some Guardian, some James Olsen Guardian. Got to clarify because there's multiple Guardians on Supergirl. We've got some James Olsen Guardian design. A design. There's a Pop Funko version of him in the store, and we also have some Cara Danvers glasses if you want to check that out. So some things from the show that are on some of our designs in the DC TV Podcast TeePublic store. So if you'd like to support us that way, you can get some cool new stuff. And we would like to thank our Legion of the Super sponsors, if I can find my graphic here, for supporting us through the Supergirl Radio Patreon. These people are Michael, Sam, Anne Marie, Yvonne, Quinn, Nicola, Leslie, Abby, Ermgard, Miriam, Cherie, Donna, Nicole, Lizeth, and Faith. If you would like to become a Supergirl Radio Patreon supporter, or a Legion of Super sponsor, as we call them, you can go to patreon.com/Supergirl Radio. We have 4 tiers of monthly memberships, and we appreciate you helping us keep the podcast lights on. And the Supergirl Radio Patreon is some bonus stuff. You get your free Supergirl Radio episode every week. But if you want some behind the scenes, cool looks at our process And sometimes
do you want me complaining to Rebecca about my cats? Occasionally, we'll just be what I think is talking, and then she'll be like, "Great, we've got the Patreon." I'm like, "Oh, I wasn't performing."
Yes, sometimes if you like the lab cats, we do occasionally have a lab cat story that gets recounted on the Patreon. So if you want some extra Supergirl Radio stuff, the Supergirl Radio Patreon is where you can get it. Well, if you want to keep up with me, you can follow me on Vero, which is a social media platform that I like at Derby Kid. That's where you can find me there. I'm also on Instagram at the Derby Kid, and I have a personal YouTube channel that's at youtube.com/duckmilkprod. I'm still going through. I know I say it every week, and it feels like I've been saying it for 10 years, but I'm still going through the Rotten Tomatoes top critics negative reviews of Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice. That's still a project that I'm going through, and I might be close to halfway, I think.
That's it?
So I'm getting there one week at a time. But it's becoming quite the journey. So I'm learning so much. I'm really digging into it. So if you want to go check that out with me over on my personal YouTube channel, I do a live stream at 9 p.m. Eastern on Sunday nights. So if you want to come talk about film criticism and art criticism on a more a broader topic, or just Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice, if you're into that, you can come hang out with me. We can talk about those things and have a good time. Also, I wanted to just kind of plug this for my friend Mike, because Mike, who is a big DC fan, he actually got me into the Teen Titans back in the day. He let me borrow a bunch of his comics from like the 80s and 90s, and I just devoured them. He's partially the reason why I'm such a big fan of Donna Troy, is because I read all those Teen Titans comic books. And so my good friend Mike is raising money for the Make-A-Wish Foundation. So
that's
it's something
so cool.
that he's sort of taking that on. So if you would like to help support Mike, in the video description, there's a link to his fundraising page if you want to go support a good cause. So Mike is trying to do a big fundraiser, and so I wanted to help support him in that way and just spread it around. So if you want to support a really great foundation, a foundation and charity, we did raise money for the Make-A-Wish Foundation a couple of years ago for DCTV podcast. But if you want to keep giving so that they can make some dreams come true for some kiddos, that's a great charity to donate to.
Yeah, that's a great cause. Yeah, I'll definitely be checking out that that link. Oh, me.
Yes.
You can find
Where
me-
where can we find you, Morgan?
You can. Oh, this whole thing. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Mojotastic. You can also find me as a co-host on the Legends of Tomorrow podcast. We just released our episode for covering the sort of the break of I think it's the anti-penultimate episode, or anti-penultimate episode, I believe.
Yeah, I guess
episode before the last
penultimate
one.
to the penultimate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's an actual term we discovered.
It is. Yeah. We found that one. We like to use it when it's possible. So there's a little break for the Olympics. So we will be taking a little bit of a break until the show comes back at the end of the month. But until then, if you're a Legends of Tomorrow podcast Patreon supporter, we are planning to get some stuff up on the Patreon. So this could be, if you're not, it could be a great time to join while you're going through withdrawal. And for DC TV After Dark, I will say there is a date on my calendar.
Ooh.
It is this month. So our mysterious posting schedule, mayhaps one day you'll be walking in March, early March perhaps, and you'll look at your phone and it'll say DC TV After Dark has a new episode, and you'll say, I'm still subscribed to that show, and that is how you'll see that it is back.
That is very exciting. Looking forward to whenever that happens. Also, you should tell Amy from the Legends of Tomorrow podcast that I listened to y'all's most recent episode, and she suggested to ask about the stunt team, and so That's why.
Yes, it was
we
a
did
great.
that.
It's amazing that you remembered, and I on the podcast forgot. I said to her, "That is an amazing idea. We should definitely do that." And then out the other ear and into the ether. But
I
thank
listened
you,
to it
Amy.
and I was like, oh, I'm going to add that. It's a great question.
Great.
So thank you, Amy, for providing a good question, because it was good to ask about how the stunt team, played a part in what the props people do in the art department.
Yeah, it wasn't one that I had thought of either, but I was like, oh yeah, they probably would have to interact with the props.
They absolutely would, because sometimes when you're fighting aliens or phantoms or world killers or what have you, any number of things, Lex Luthor, probably a lot. You're probably fighting Lex Luthor a lot. You're gonna
Like once a year, probably.
You're gonna need
Ballpark.
You're gonna need a prop for that action sequence. Well, I guess that's gonna do it for this episode of Supergirl Radio. But until next time, I'm still Rebecca Johnson.
And I'm still Morgan Glennon, and we hope you will now appreciate the props of Supergirl in new ways.
McGurk! I love
Not
typing.
mess with my Google Docs, Meeksy.
Supergirl Radio is going live every night of the week. How do you like it? Is becoming a human burrito a plus or a minus? I don't know. It does seem snug.
I mean, they say you are what you eat.
Kira. I love that. So I do a podcast called Supergirl Radio, and one of our segments is Lena Luthor, Boardroom or Ballroom, because
she looks like a boss in this coat.
Nasty Luthor like a different Luthor? It's not just Lena being mean?
No.
Helen Slater here. It's so fun to know that you're hosting a podcast called Supergirl Radio.
Yeah!